Welcome to this SCORE webinar. I'm Bill Petrovic. I am a SCORE mentor and I coordinate the workshops for SCORE. This is one of many workshops we have. Some of you may have already been to one. If this is your first, hope you enjoy it and welcome. We're running about 2 a month, try to find topics that are of interest to entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs. This workshop here is designed more for people who may not be fully into owning or running a business, but if you are, that's okay too. You probably pick up some good tips here. But SCORE is the sponsor. We are manned by volunteers. All of the people you see at SCORE doing mentoring or putting on workshops are all unpaid volunteers. We're a not-for-profit organization. We are a resource partner of the Small Business Administration and coordinate with them quite well. A lot of people find SCORE by going to the SBA website, and it's easy to link over to our website. So we do these webinars at no charge. We do our mentoring at no charge. So SCORE is great for small business because it's free. So I'm going to let this webinar get started, and we have 2 speakers, Bill Nicolai and Don Dorsey, and they've divided up the presentation, and Bill will be taking it over from here and going first. And as this goes along, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll be watching those, and sometimes I'll be butting in and asking them on the spot or saving some of them till the end. So let's go, and welcome Susan. Bill, don't forget to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, and welcome everyone. And Bill didn't mention it, but copies of the webinar is being recorded and copies of the slides will be provided. So I thank you for everyone for coming today. My name is Bill Nicolai. I'm a retired corporate controller. I've been with SCORE since 2019, and in my career, I served in many corporate roles or division controllership positions, especially in the international realm. So I'm thrilled to be here today. I'd like you through the chat feature. If you do have a business idea or a company, I'd like for you to include those. Also, why did you decide to come to the webinar? It may help us in the future design these. And as importantly, if you have one question you would like answered today, what would that be? I'll let you type those in. Today, we're going to talk about 6 different topics, but just as importantly, we have some myths and realities to get you started with regards to what is or what it takes to starting your business. There's different ways of doing it. There's different characteristics of each person that does it. There's ways of being found. That's what we call the marketing area. And you certainly have to worry about your government and state and federal tax regulations or licensing. We'll talk about that a little bit. The importance of cash and what it takes to make a plan, because budgeting and planning is everything. A very nice myth that everyone thinks about is, all I need is a good idea to be a successful entrepreneur. Yes, you do definitely need a good idea. And if you have a unique value proposition, even better. But the reality is it takes a lot of hard work, research, planning, and successful implementation strategies to get into a profitable enterprise. You will have possibly many multiple ideas. Making sure that you can prioritize your ideas and also ensure that you can get your thoughts across is very, very critical. If you go out on your own, you don't have to work so hard. You know, who has heard that one? The reality is you will probably work harder than you ever have in your career. But exhaustion fades when you get that aha moment that I did it on my own. You know, consider everything that you're going to have to do. You may not have vacations. You may not have sick leave. Do you have contingency plans to handle those downturns? Consider having backup plans. There we go. Sorry about that. Another myth that you may have is you think that, oh, because I have my business, I can deduct all my expenses so I don't have to pay any taxes. Well, the reality is that paying taxes means that you're profitable. So that's really not a bad thing. But also know that you need to have good records. Possibly think about hiring an accountant if you're not strong in accounting or finance to make sure that you can maximize all your tax advantages. If you work independently, you don't have a boss. Think again on that one. The fact is you will have many bosses. You have your customers, your clients, your vendors, your suppliers. Don't forget about the government. You're going to have to report to them. The fact is you're going to be accountable to many, many people. The time never ends. If you're a business owner, you get to do the work that you find most interesting. I wish that would be the case. You're going to be wearing many hats. You're going to have to juggle many skills. And you're going to have to conduct many activities that you find downright boring. There are going to be some tasks that you may not feel comfortable in. You're going to have to take out the trash every once in a while. You're going to have to hire people. You're going to have to train people. You're going to have to negotiate contracts. Think again with regards to everything that is out there that you may have to do. Finally, if you choose to be self-employed, you're going to be limited to what you can achieve. After all, you're going to be working alone. However, the limitations are created mostly by the space between your ears. You're going to have to be realistic. Don't trap yourself into doing too many things or self-imposing your limitations. But starting your business actually unlocks all kinds of possibilities. It's just up to you in terms of what you can do. Think through everything that's out there. The satisfaction of accomplishments can be tremendous. But there's another reality. After 2 years, only 69% of businesses will be successful. And unfortunately, after 5 years, nearly half of all businesses will fail. The good news is that those companies that start with mentors and having people that help them, the likelihood of success is nearly 70%. Think of that. Having a mentor greatly improve your odds of success. And think through the 4 reasons why business fail. There might be lack of planning. You don't have enough money. You had insufficient capitalization. You mismanaged your cash. We'll talk about that one in a little bit. And something as simple as you didn't price your product properly. We here at SCORE offer mentors with different fields of expertise that can help you in all those areas so that you can succeed. So when you start your business, how do you do it? Well, you can start on your own. You can buy a business. You can even buy a franchise. Where you conduct it is also a possibility. Many start from their own home. Many think all I need to do is do an online business, or maybe I'll just have the traditional brick and mortar business. Let's talk about each one of these. When you start your brand new business, you're not hampered by, what happened in the past. As we mentioned previously, you're only limited to what you can think of. You get to choose your location, your relationship, everything that you want to do. You can research what you want to do, and you can make your dreams come true. However, that also sets the fact that there's no base to go on. You're going to have to make all your decisions. One error can certainly complicate your success. You don't want to do that. You're going to have your dreams turn into a nightmare. Proper planning is going to be very important. I had a client who worked for a company that did doors and cabinets. And he thought, shoot, I can do this better than my owner. So he went out and started his own business, did everything there was supposed to do with customer service. And 25 years later, he retired very comfortably. He fulfilled his dream. So if you don't want to start from scratch, you can buy an existing building or buy an existing business. After all, if you've done your research and the business is proven to be profitable and being successful, you can say, hey, why can't I continue it? Well, understand exactly what you're buying. Are you buying assets? Are you assuming liabilities? Are there patents or customer lists that you have? Are there any restrictions or covenants to compete? We had a client once who bought a business and the owner moved down the street 2-3 miles and opened up a brand new business doing the same thing. He hadn't done his research. But this is a good place to start. If you haven't, you just may want to consider getting good professional advice to help you in understanding exactly what you're buying. We've all heard of the franchises. We've heard of the UPS stores, the Domino's Pizza, and of course, McDonald's. There's many, many advantages to buying a franchise. It's proven. Everyone knows the name. You get lots of help from corporate. There's definitely consulting relationships, and you have people that can help you out. However, understand that it could be very expensive to get in, and you don't control everything that you're needing to do. You're going to have operational boundaries. You're going to have franchise fees. You're going to have to make royalty payments. You won't have any flexibility in your marketing or how you reach your customers. Understand all the contracts and all the requirements if you do get into a franchise that it will be. So you decided what business you want to start. How do you want to base it? Many of our clients are small entrepreneurs and they will start from home. After all, it's convenient. I have my expenses. I might even have a room that I can work from. And if done properly and you keep the proper records, those expenses can be deducted, but can be deducted as part of the business. But have you asked all the right questions? What are your neighbors going to think? Do you have any zoning requirements? Do you have enough parking? Something that people don't think about is if I install new equipment, is the infrastructure strong enough to handle all the power grids? Do I have space for expansion? Do I have room for inventory? There are going to be many questions that you need to answer in terms of starting your business at home. Well, I could think about going online. That seems pretty easy. All I need is a computer, right? Well, there are lower startup costs. I can reach everyone in the United States or across the world. It's definitely very flexible. I can add or subtract from my product lines very easily. Unfortunately, the pricing pressures are very, very severe. There's a low conversion rate. Think about the fact that 1 to 2% of all customers that come to your website actually convert those into sales. Why is that? Well, there's low barriers to entry. There's lots of competition. If it's so easy to get into, think about the numbers of people that are getting into it. For you extroverts, you're going to be sitting behind a computer. Where's that personal contact? Where's that sensory? You're not influencing sales. All you're doing is just waiting for someone to come to your website and hopefully buy your product. Which leads me to, you will need an excellent website. We at SCORE have sponsored 5 excellent webinars on setting up websites, search engine optimization, Google Meet, Google Search, Google Analytics. On our score.org website, there's additional resources that help you understand the importance of being found. Don's going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later. But you can do it. There's no reason why you can't. And finally, the traditional brick and mortar. We know the store that you go to. You get to influence your sales, you get to influence your marketing, you get to influence how you display your products. But it also means that you have higher startup costs. You have a physical location that you're going to have to build out. You have overhead, you have electricity, you have operating expenses. You may have some fixed costs if you have a mortgage. And certainly where you place your building and your location is going to be very important. Once you set it up, you don't have the flexibility. And if you're selling product, think of those 70 to 90% discount racks at a clothing store if you didn't buy the right product, or those seasonal products at the end, your Christmas or your gardening supplies that you didn't sell. Think through all of those. But also, can you afford a COVID hit? Unfortunately, this year, many stores failed because there's just the traffic wasn't out there. But many people get a charge out of being able to meet their customers. There's advantages and disadvantages of each. So you start thinking through, okay, I got an idea. Do I have what it takes to become an entrepreneur? Everyone thinks and knows that they're hard workers and they're organized. The reality of life is you will be responsible for everything that goes on in your business, all the decisions, all the tasks. So you have to be decisive. You're going to have to be able to negotiate. You're going to have to be persistent. You're going to have to ask people. You're going to have to be organized because there are going to be many tasks. And you're going to have to know, there might be a lot of activities that you like to do, but others that you don't. Well, you're just going to have to suck it up and understand that you're going to have to train people and hire people and negotiate contracts and work with your suppliers. We think about all those different activities that you need to do. But two that are very important here is it might be time to swallow your pride. Become a networker. Ask for help. Know who you can ask for help from. And I don't want to underestimate the importance of having a great supportive family. If there's conflicts, one of them is going to suffer. And we know what some of those long-term consequences might be. Go back to some of the myths that I talked about a little while ago. All these points will definitely come into play. So if those are the subjective characteristics, what other characteristics are you going to need? Well, you're going to need enough money. You're going to need enough capital to run your business. We know that you need money to make money. We talked about the necessity to be able to manage all your activities and multitask. Just because you like doing one activity doesn't mean that other activities don't occur that you have to address. Do you have the education or the experience in the field that you want to get into? We had one customer or one client that came to us that wanted to set up a barbecue stand. And he was from a place in this world that hadn't had barbecue, but he had eaten it a couple of times and thought it was pretty good. So we asked him, what do you know about it? He goes, well, nothing actually. We suggested that he possibly go to the stores and check it out, even maybe become an employee or become a manager of a store, learn all the ins and outs of what it takes to run a restaurant, especially barbecues and understanding clients. So it does take a strong work ethic. You're going to need to manage your time. And I can't emphasize enough, just have the willingness to get input from others. And do your research. Test your markets. Ask questions. Ask your vendors. Your vendors supply your different competitors. Maybe you can get some information from them. Talk to your customers. Again, get a mentor. Venture ideas. And really understand where you're going to need help. Because you're going to wear many, many hats. It might be nice to be the CEO, but there's a lot of activities that happen underneath it. I can't emphasize that enough. We have a great example we like to share. Think of a baker. She loves to make donuts. loves to make donuts. Well, the reality is that she may only be baking donuts 40 to 50% of her time. The other time, you have all the administrative tasks. You're going to have to hire people, train people, update that website so she can be found, negotiate with the fumigator, deal with the regulatory authorities to make sure she has her licenses in place, and the list goes on. Lots of great activities and fun. Some people get a charge out of this, and some people find it very stressful. Understand what is it that you can handle. And there's many activities that go on. And one of the most important ones is being able to be found. So I'm going to turn this over now to my partner, Don. We'll talk to you about marketing.
Good morning, everybody. Good to have you with us on this Saturday morning. My name is Don Dorsey. I've been a SCORE mentor for a number of years, and my work background goes back into a variety of different categories. I was involved over the years in manufacturing, a lot in sales and marketing, general operations, and it ranged from large companies, Fortune 500 companies, to very small entrepreneurial companies. I've been with a couple of those. As I've told people when we have these workshops in person, that I've lived in a world where the paycheck showed up every couple of weeks without any issues, and then I've worked in the world where on Friday afternoon we'd have an executive meeting and we talk about how we were going to make payroll on Tuesday. So I understand really both sides of that coin. And when you're in business for yourself, there's a lot more of those Friday meetings on how to make payroll than there is just automatically flowing into your checking account. So what I want to talk about in the next few minutes is key elements of marketing. And when we do these workshops, in fact, we have one that's we call the Business Academy. And when we get post-COVID, we'll do it again where we're together all day. And in those, we spend 3 or 4 hours or slightly even more on the whole area of marketing. What is marketing? How do you build the strategy? How do you build your plan? All of those things. So this morning we're gonna do a very high level kind of a brief look at it. So next slide, Bill. Excuse me. So right at the top, everything you do. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Bill. Really, marketing at its heart, if you will, is everything you do to get and keep a targeted customer. So it's a whole series of things, and then from that you build a strategy. Because what it comes down to is you're trying to create a desire for somebody to purchase your product or service. That's what it boils down to. So if we take those first 2 points of everything you do that'll go into the strategy, it includes things like branding. You build a brand for your company so that you're recognizable. And that means there's a visual identity. What is it that you look like? And that could be logos, it could be taglines. Another part of your visual or your branding is a marketing message. You've probably heard the term elevator pitch, and that would say that if we get into an elevator and you strike up, which we don't do in these COVID times, but somebody strikes up a conversation with you. It's like, what do you do? Well, my business is. And can you explain that in 20 to 30 seconds? Depends on the speed of that elevator. But it comes down to what is that marketing message? And it needs to be specific. It needs to be precise. It needs to be understandable. So that when you give that to me, I know what kind of business that you're in, and I know whether I'm interested in pursuing that any further. So that marketing message is really critical. And then that message needs to be conveyed in everything you do, all your promotional materials, all of your online advertising and so forth. So building a brand is very, very critical to the success of your business. Another part of marketing is advertising, and that can be promotional materials that you create, public relations. It's interesting if you search it out as to how many opportunities there are in the community to get free advertising, where you can write a piece that you could submit to the Indy Star or local newspapers. So there's a lot of places where you can get some good recognition. You got to do some work and you got to find these places, but you can do it at no cost. All your online communications, any email marketing that you might develop to reach out to prospects. In some cases, email marketing can be used to acquire a customer, and in many cases, as we all have personally experienced, we are a customer, and others, these companies, then use email to reach out to us for relationship purposes. Instagram, Facebook, these are all online platforms that allow you to, in some cases, to sell. Instagram, as an example, is being used significantly to actually try to acquire customers, as is Facebook. And then there's the whole area of direct sales calls, where you knock on doors and you talk to people and you find those prospects and you make presentations, you submit bids, you make proposals, all of those aspects. So if I kind of bundle that together and say, we've got branding, advertising, promotions, direct sales efforts, that really is everything you're doing to try and find a customer. And that really folds into a marketing strategy. The next point there I am saying is that it's also the tactics to generate some kind of action or physical or measurable response. How many times when you're dealing online, basically what that online retailer is trying to do is to get you to click on something, to download, to call, to write back, contact us, give us your email, and we'll be in touch with you. That's what you're really trying to do with all of your marketing tools, is you're trying to generate some kind of a response that's very specific. Come to your office, come to your store. We've got a sale on Friday. Wednesday afternoons, it's three for the price of two. Those kind of things, or scheduling a meeting, scheduling a session. So all of the things that you do to try and reach and secure a customer. Okay, next slide, Bill. Let's take a look at some of the things that you really need to understand as you're going into business. Starting point would be, what's the industry look like? So kind of, get yourself up at a 10,000 foot level and look down. And what this business I want to go into is in an industry. What does that industry look like? If I'm in the tech industry, for the most part, that's on the left side of this slide, where it's rapid growth. That's very encouraging. Now, there are a lot of downsides to the tech business, but it's a growth business. And then from a life cycle standpoint, this industry kind of gets up to the top there of maturity. And some examples of I'll call them more localized businesses that are more mature. And one example would be landscaping. So if you think about the Indianapolis area, and there are lots of different parts to landscaping. I mean, it could be you're going to be a grower. You're going to have a retail location where you're selling trees and shrubs and so forth. But let's talk about landscape maintenance. So the business I want to go into is cutting grass, trimming shrubs, doing some fertilizing, that type of thing. That's a pretty mature business. And the needs in that business are pretty much being satisfied. So when I look at this industry that I'm thinking about going into, if it's very mature, then I have to understand, I have to have something unique, or if it starts to decline, then I've got to try to reinvent myself, or this thing is going to really go into the skids. Current situation right now is brick and mortar retail as a good example. If you think about, well, I want to open up a store, I'm going to sell such and such. In this world that we're living in today, which has been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, there are a lot of retailers going out of business. So that is a very, very declining, and in some cases, rapidly declining industry. So I'm not suggesting there's nothing really to learn from this other than you have to understand the industry that you're in. So next, you have to understand your markets. And the main point there is defining a market need. You have to find a marketplace that has a need. There's problems that have to be solved. There's needs that have to be fulfilled, and that these are compelling, not just, oh, I think everybody needs to eat, so I'm going to open a restaurant, or everybody needs to have your grass cut, so I'm going to go into landscaping. You need to really understand what problem you're solving and what need you're filling, and that comes then largely into your product and service. What is that product or service? What does it do? What are the benefits? What's the value proposition? Is your product or service truly unique? What are the unique characteristics, or term that we use in our workshops, USP, unique selling proposition? Or are you just one more in a busy marketplace? There's a lot of examples that you can find as you look into it, where there are businesses that they're just one of many. They don't stand out in any way. And when Bill talked about the success of businesses after a couple of years or 5 years, this is a real key part of it. And then what's the competitive advantage? I can't stress this one enough. What's your competitive advantage? What will make you more attractive to the customer? Because right now, if you have a product or service that is currently in the marketplace by a lot of competitors, so some need is being fulfilled for the customer, what's going to make you more attractive to that customer than people who are already providing it? And there's a million examples of companies that have been able to create uniqueness or differentiation, even though their product or service may be similar to many others. So it's really that differentiation, that uniqueness, where you provide more value than somebody else. And one thing that I've heard in some of the sessions with clients, they'll be like, well, what's going to be your competitive advantage? Well, I'm going to give the best customer service in the world. Okay. How would you define that? What are you going to do different than the other people? Because quite frankly, there is no one out there in business, typically, well, maybe there is, but probably no one in business that says, what I give lousy customer service. That's what's my strength. Everybody says they give good customer service. So there has to be more than just that. There has to be something new. Now, that is a good unique proposition if it's unique and not just some words. So, okay, next one, Bill. Understanding your customers. So we've talked about the industry itself, and is it growing, mature, declining? We talked about really understanding your markets, but you really need to understand your customers. Who are they? Are you going to be selling to retailers? Are you selling to consumers? Are you business to business? You hear phraseology like B2B, that's business to business, B2C, business to consumer. So you need to understand who you're going to sell to, who you're going to serve, because those considerations will determine the kind of channels that you'll use to go to market. the number of prospects. How big is this space? I've met with clients that say, well, the service that I'm offering, I'll give you an example. Let's say human resources services. So I'm gonna get into business where I provide, I can work with companies on building employee handbooks and hiring people and onboarding and dealing with labor laws and so forth. So the question then is, well, who are you going to provide these services to? Well, small businesses. Okay. Anything more detailed than that? Oh no, everybody could use my service. Well, yes, that's true. But there are millions of small businesses, excuse me, and they all have different characteristics and different uniqueness and so forth. So you need to understand how big is this market you're going into, and as you think about who you're going to serve, narrow that down into more of your niche and understand how many opportunities are there in that. The income level, ability to pay, depending on the kind of service you're offering. This may be potential customers may be only higher net worth individuals who can afford what you are trying to offer. So you really need to understand your product or service and where that fits, and your customer's ability to pay for it. Purchasing habits, that could be something that's seasonal. So you need to understand that. When do people buy this product or service? The demographics, what are the ages and gender of your potential customers? Is this more of a business that's going to appeal to men or women, younger people, older people? So you really have to understand those demographics, because that starts to indicate how many prospects are out there. And where do these people hang out? So if you're talking about trying to reach out to find your target customer using social media platforms, you may be appealing more to a younger demographic. Not that those of us with gray hair aren't savvy about technology and social media platforms, but that's not necessarily the majority. So, for example, I met with a client who was starting a business of renting floral arrangements for weddings. These are artificial floral arrangements, and she had developed a very unique technology, purchased very, very expensive and very realistic artificial flowers, and then built creativity into the floral designs for the bride and for the reception tables and so forth. So when she was looking at the demographics of her market, who she was going to appeal to, it was very narrowed down. It's brides in mid-20s to mid-30 age range. There were a number of other demographics, but then she posed the question of where do these people hang out? How do I find these people? And one of the places that she would find them is on Instagram. And she said that very heavy uses of Instagram by that age demographic, by that gender demographic, to find the kinds of services and products for a wedding. And she started a very, very robust Instagram program, and I've been following her for the last couple of years. It's outstanding. But there's a case where she really paid attention to the demographics of her potential customer, where they hang out and how she was going to reach them. Purchasing channels is this direct, online? Again, the geographic locations, where are these people and how are you going to get to them? So next slide, Bill. Understanding your competitors. I can't stress this enough. This is really, really important. Every business has competitors. If there are no competitors, if there's nobody in this business, and I've heard that before, it says, well, I've looked around and nobody does this. Then the question you need to ask yourself is why? And if you get some good answers that nobody's thought of this, I've created something that is totally unique. Full speed ahead. We'll talk more about how you validate that, but that'd be a great thing. But for the most part, you're going to have a competitor, competitors, plural. So you need to understand the products and services that they offer. Do they have a very broad line of product or service? Are they kind of a full service whatever that you may only be able to handle a portion of that? What are the price points? This is real critical to you building your own pricing strategy. How you price your product or service has to be largely based on the marketplace, what the market will accept. And then you have to look back into your cost structure to see if, can I make any money doing this? I mean, it's fine to say, I want to sell my product for $10, but if it costs you $9.50 to make it, it may not be a business that you can afford to be in. And some of your competitors may be big enough that they have a lower cost structure than you do, and they can afford to price the product lower and still make a profit. So you really need to understand, again, you need to understand these competitors. What do they have that's really unique, and what are the benefits that they offer? This is very, very, very critical, because that's who you're going up against. If you're in a mature market, the way you're going to get customers is to take them away from a competitor. So understanding the competitor will help you understand how difficult it's going to be to take those customers away, and the size and profitability of these businesses. If you're going up against a large multifaceted landscaper, you may be able to compete in a niche, but you need to understand that they offer a lot more, and their size and their profitability may allow them to, if you start to make an impact on them, they could start to squeeze you. So again, these aren't go, no go decisions. These are, as much as anything, just make sure you understand them. And then what strategy do they use? How do they go to market? How do they attract their customers? How do they reach them? How do they find them? Because understanding how your competitors go and get customers will help you to build your strategy in terms of where you need to go. So do your research. We've seen so many examples of very unprepared clients who come in and they'll start to explain the business and they're all excited about it. I can remember one in particular, a lady came in and it was going to be an online service that she was going to offer. And I asked who the competitors were. And she said, well, there's really nobody in this area doing it. And it literally only took one click on a Google search. And it was like, wow, here's 4 different options that are available. So do your homework. That's the beauty of the internet that we have in the search engines, is there's a lot of data out there that you can find that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't. So, okay, if there are any questions about marketing, it's a deep, complex subject, and we'd love to work with you individually on building your marketing plans. But that's kind of a high-level look at it today. So if there are any questions, just pop those into chat. And now we're gonna switch gears and we're gonna talk about kind of a legal structure of your business. And again, this one's going to be at a very high level. Number one, we're not going to provide any legal advice, and I just want to give you kind of a highlight of structuring your business from a legal standpoint. Sole proprietors, different business entities, there's really basically 5. There are a lot of subsets of this that you can get into, but the 5 basic ones: the sole proprietorship and the partnership, which is one or more persons operating in a business. These are informal structures. These are informal entities. They don't require a state. They don't need to be allowed by state statute. The key there is you want to secure a name, doing business as. So some years ago, I started a personal consulting business, and I just called it Don Dorsey Consulting. Pretty simple. Registered the name, and away I went. I operated as a sole proprietor. My clients paid me as under that business name. I had a separate bank account, but it wasn't very complex. I had several clients, and it was fairly simple. I didn't need to do anything more than that. Didn't really have liability or tax considerations to make. So that was a sole proprietorship. Could have done the same thing if it was me and my brother operating as a partnership. The last three then are formal structures that are allowed by state statute or state law. Limited liability company is one of the most common ones that's used. And then there's the conventional C corporation, and then the subchapter S corporation, which is really the subchapter S is a corporation, but under that statute of subchapter S, it addresses different tax considerations. So most of these are really done on the basis of liability and tax considerations. The link that is shown here on this slide is a really, really good one. It's the Indiana Secretary of State's site. If you're really interested in learning more about it, go to that site. It's an easy read, but it gives you the specifics, excuse me, of these different types of entities and what you need to do or why you should select one over the other one. Next. Keep it simple. This I can't stress enough. Don't get too complicated when you're in the early stages of a business. The sole proprietor is the simplest. Register your name with the state. It's called a DBA, doing business as. So in my case, it was doing business as Don Dorsey Consulting, and I registered the name. I wasn't concerned about somebody stealing it, so I didn't trademark it. It was my entity. If somebody started to use it in place of me, then I would have figured out how to deal with it. LLC, the limited liability company, is the most popular, if you will, with small businesses, even larger or mid-sized businesses, when liability is a concern, because it protects your personal assets from liability of the company, as does a C corporation. The C corporation has a lot of advantages and a lot more elements to it. Excuse me. Multiple owners. When you get into multiple owners, it now gets a lot more complex because now you need to consider a C corp, or under an LLC, participants are not owners per se of the business. So anyway, I want to keep it as simple as possible. And those are, excuse me. Oh, losing my voice here this morning. Anyway, the considerations are really about liability and taxes. So go to the next page, because this is where it kind of ties back. You need a team. Every new business, every small business, every business needs a team. Oh, I jumped ahead of myself. I apologize. Insurance. We'll take a minute on insurance. You must have insurance. Again, we're talking about liabilities. We're talking about a lot of those legal considerations. You have to be sure that you've got the right kind of coverages, like motor vehicles, for example. If you're using your car or your truck for business, you just have to understand that your personal car insurance is not going to do the trick if you're in business. If you're using it for business, you could have a claim that could be denied. So the recommendation is there's a whole series of insurance considerations here that you need to think about. Get in contact with an agent that specializes in business insurance. I'm not proposing anybody in particular, but a lot of times what you'll find is find an independent agent who has some specialty. They may do some personal insurance, but they specialize in business insurance, and they can write policies with a lot of different companies. They're not just a State Farm or an Allstate or Geico or Progressive or Liberty Mutual, whoever. They can write policies with a lot of different companies, and so that's the recommendation that you would contact an independent agent. Okay, next slide. You also need to pay attention to government regulations. So the business you're going into, make sure that you understand if there are licenses and approvals that are necessary. If you're getting into some kind of healthcare field, there are county approvals and state approvals and regulations and so forth. You need to really understand those clearly. And there's a wealth of information at Secretary of State's office, online, et cetera. Need to understand labor laws, immigration laws, particularly if you're going to hire anybody. You want to be sure that you're not running afoul of the law when you're hiring people, to be sure that they're properly documented and so forth, depending on the nature of the business you're getting into. IRS and Social Security withholding, you don't mess with those guys. I worked with a company that was struggling, and they felt like if they could not make their withholding payments to the federal government and the state governments, that they could get by for a couple of weeks, and that is just really, really high risk. And unfortunately, the CPA that they were working with said, "Yeah, we could do it for a little while," and they played that game for a little while, and it'll just catch up and bite you. So you just got to really understand what's going on there, and don't mess with the feds and the state. State sales tax requirements. If you are selling a product in the state of Indiana, then you have to charge sales tax, and there's a whole process that you need to go through for that. And highlighted on the screen there, on January 27th from noon to 1:30, there is a webinar called the Indiana State Tax Primer, and that's on the Indianapolis SCORE website, which we're going to show that to you in just a little bit. But if you're getting into business, you need to understand the elements of sales tax consideration. I would strongly encourage you to spend that hour and a half and watch that. It'll be very good. Okay, next slide, last slide for me. You need to build a team, which is what I tried to get you into a couple of slides ago, prematurely, but every business needs a team. We've talked about legal entities. You need a lawyer. We've talked about insurance. You need an insurance agent. Bill's going to talk to you about managing funds and funding. You need accountants. You need banker relationships. So you don't go it alone. You build the team, because as Bill said, there's a lot of hats to wear, and you got to get some help. Don't go it alone. And the business mentor, we will emphasize that over and over again, a very critical member of that team. So that covers my portion for a bit. I'd like to turn it back to Bill, and he'll talk to you about some funding and cash management. So there you go, Bill.
Thank you, Don. So you've got a plan, you got a marketing plan, you set up your business structure, you're ready to execute it, you're ready to do it. So what's it going to take to get there? Well, it's going to take some money. But before you even get started, do you have enough? Have you considered everything that it's going to take? And especially in those cases where you've gone from earning a salary and knowing that paycheck comes in every other week to starting your business where you're going to be depending on the profits. Have you considered what that transition is going to cost? So very diligently, you must determine your monthly budget. This includes your mortgage or your rent, your groceries, your entertainment, your utilities, your childcare, clothing, your gift allowances. Think through everywhere where you spend money, including where can you scale back. Running a business without cash is the first cause for destruction. You do not want to run out of cash. So understanding where your debt is and what your other fixed obligations are is going to be very, very critical. Starting your business is not where you put your 401k monies. Your 401k monies is your emergency fund to handle your living expenses. You will want 6 to 12 months of living expenses before you launch your business. So have you prepared your budget and you really understand where your money goes to? Because your life savings will definitely play a part. Because when you start your business, there's going to be 2 sets of cash requirements. The first one is, what do you need up front? We talked about, those professional fees or their accounting fees or those lawyer fees, depending on how your business is set up. Don talked about your marketing strategies and your research. Have you had to pay to set up a website and understand what all that means? If you're setting up a landscaping company, what are the tools and the equipment that you're going to have to purchase? These are one-time purchases that don't generate any revenue when you've made those costs. If you buy a brick and mortar or you have display locations, what kind of leasehold improvements have you made? Again, these are all cash outlays. If you set up a restaurant, do you have your licenses and your permits that you might have had to pay for? That initial inventory that you're going to have. And do you have enough working capital reserve? Understand also that any plan is as good as you set it, but there's always going to be some surprises. Think through all the contingency planning and other funds that you may need for any unexpected expenditures. And understand that if you're setting up a manufacturing company, a retail, a consulting company, your level of initial investments will differ depending on the types of businesses that you will establish. Because going forward, you're going to have ongoing expense. Salaries, which includes even what you might pay yourself if you're a sole entrepreneur, is included. Your rent, your insurance, your taxes and fees. Yes, you're going to have to pay your withholding taxes. One thing that you never get out of, even in bankruptcy, are withholding taxes and payroll taxes that you collected on behalf of your employees. Don spent quite a bit of time on marketing. If you borrowed money, you're going to have to pay it back. And of course, all your operating expenses. We at SCORE have many templates to help you set up operating budgets, manage those budgets, set up templates to understand what the difference is between startup expenses, ongoing expenses, and how you manage your cash going forward. So where are we going to find this money? Well, I may have it. That's the equity. That's money that I own that I don't have to pay back. But that differs very significantly from debt, which is money you're going to have to pay back. You have money that comes from your own personal savings. Don't forget about your friends and family. You may have partners. If you're a sole proprietor, well, you're going to have to contribute everything. But if you have a partner, that partner can contribute. And very importantly, profits retained in your business. Think through before you take in your salary or taking money out of the business, what money do you need to reinvest? So the profits retained in the business that can be reinvested can be a very, very important source of cash. Or those profits go towards monies that you've borrowed. The principal and most common source is banks and credit unions. But you can also go to your friends. Friends are nice, but money makes strange decisions. So make sure you've understood what all those requirements if you're going to borrow money. You can go to the SBA, they can help you with microloans. And in the worst case scenarios, you may even want to consider using credit cards. But understand that the interest rates are very onerous. The repayment terms are very stringent. and certainly something that we do not recommend. If you're having to use credit cards, you probably haven't capitalized your business strong enough. So how do you know if you have enough? Well, you can go to the bank. And Don mentioned you'll need a team. And one of those team members was your banker. Your banker needs to be your friend. Get to know your bank and get to know your banker and have him or her understand your business. They can be one of your biggest partners. But they're also going to want to make sure that you have the capability to repay. The bank's in the business to get its money. It doesn't want to have a loan that goes sour. So your background and your credit score and your willingness and your ability to pay back, the soundness of your business, that financial plan that we've talked about a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more in the next section, is going to be very, very important. How much you show of your business, how much money you're investing. If you're putting in 50% into the business, the bank is going to look at that saying, well, this person is serious and certainly is invested and therefore is a better risk as compared to that person that only has 5 or 10% of his money, including his financial history and the financial projections as shown by that business plan. Your experience will matter. And also, how many competitors out there? What is the likelihood of success? You know, those there's three C's, your character, your collateral, and credit are critical. And that business plan that you put together that demonstrates the capability and the ability to generate and to execute your plan and your business are going to be very, very important. So when you get this money, how are you going to manage it? Certainly separate all your personal from your business activities. We can't emphasize that enough. We talked from the very beginning, you need to keep very good records. Your tax accountant is going to also appreciate that when he or she puts together your financial statements, your tax returns, and anything else that they need to report. So what this means is that you want to make your deposits in total or gross. Don't net expenses against your deposits. Someone gives you $100 to pay for a bill and you need $20 to go buy lunch for the group. Well, make your deposit for 100 and show an expense report for 20. You need to understand all the ins and outs of your business, because as you analyze your business, you need to understand what are the gross receipts and what are the gross expenditures as you proceed. So there are some strategies also. You want to hold on to your cash as long as possible. As long as you have cash, you can continue managing your business. We had a client, he was a printer. He started spending his money too quickly, and he would schedule a job or he would contract for a job and he'd have to buy special paper. Well, he had lost all his credit and people wouldn't supply to him. So he had this $2,000 printing job, but he couldn't get the paper to print it. It definitely was a strong catch-22. So as long as you have cash, you'll be able to stay in business. So have strategies to hold on to that cash. Talk to your vendors. Can you negotiate 30, 60, even maybe 90-day payment terms? They're also a partner. You can work with them if you do run into a little bit of trouble and you've shown that you've been able to repay in the past, you may be able to get longer payment terms. Use credit cards to collect your receivables. It's immediate cash. Sure, there's a 1% to 2% fee, but having cash in the bank is going to be very important. So understand all your banking activity. Reconcile your bank statements. Have adequate cash reserves when you start your business. There's going to be contingencies and surprises that you just did not think of. So when you put your plan together, add 10% for contingencies, even 15%. That day that comes when you have an emergency and you have that in the bank, you're going to be very, very appreciative. So understand all your flows and continue updating your cash forecast at least 6 months in the future, if not a year into the future. We can't emphasize enough that managing your cash goes a long way towards the success of your business. And finally, you're going to have to plan, and I'll let Don talk about that.
Thank you, Bill. Boy, the whole cash side of starting a business is so critical. The story I told you earlier about sitting there trying to figure out how to make payroll on Tuesday. It's such an incredibly important part of being in business, being successful, and staying in business. So that's something, and you're probably going to need some help with that. Yeah, that's part of the team. So let's talk a little bit about business planning. Typically, I'd say some years ago, if we met with a client, it would not be uncommon for them to start, explain their business and so forth. And somebody would say, well, do you have a business plan? Well, yeah, I started to write one. Well, if you go to the website, you can get a template for a business plan. And I worked with one client, this goes back quite a few years, where I don't know that we recommended that to him, but he was doing that himself. He spent an inordinate amount of time writing a business plan, but he hadn't really determined whether or not this business was going to be viable. And so that was kind of the starting point. Was he went through what I would call more of an academic exercise. So a traditional business plan is not necessarily where you should start, because that plan assumes that the business can be built. I could sit down today with a business idea and I could write a 15, 20-page business plan. I'm going to put a whole lot of assumptions into it, and I could build that plan. And it would show that the business can be built. But what I don't know is whether that business should be built. That's the big question. That's the question you have to ask yourself. Back to my landscaping example, can I build a plan that describes the landscaping business? I can, but should I start the business? That's the big question. So one thing you need to do is to really articulate your vision. This should be a very, very detailed look at your vision of the business, what that's going to look like. And what you have to recognize is that this idea that you have initially lacks any compelling demand. You don't know if there's anybody out there who wants your product or service and is willing to pay for it. And while they might say they do, when the time comes to sign on the dotted line, remains to be seen. So you need some customer proof. You need to get proof that the customer is willing to buy it. And that means you need to engage with potential customers. You need to talk to a lot of potential customers, not a few. You might need to talk to 50 or 100 and explain, here is my business idea. Here's what I'm going to do. And if I can do these things, would you be interested in doing business with me? So it takes a lot of effort to really engage those potential customers. And your SCORE mentor can help you to build a plan over how you go out to find those people and the questions you ask and so forth. But here's the key question. Do enough people really care about this problem or this need for this to be a viable business? Are there enough people who care? And will they tell their friends about it? Not your friends, you telling your friends, but are there enough people out there to make this viable? And they will tell their friends, this is the person you need to do business with and why. So that's the main question. Next slide. So rather than start and creating a traditional business plan, we suggest using a planning tool called the Business Model Canvas. And this is a one-page business plan that has a lot of different sections to it. There's about 9 parts to this this canvas, covering areas like your customers, your value proposition, customer relationships, the different key resources that'll be required, partners, costs, revenues. So it really on one page is a template to give you a tool to think through these various elements and quantify them. There's significant resources available at indianapolis.score.org, which you see on the screen, not just for this, but for a lot of different elements of starting a business. So from a business planning standpoint, let me summarize here. Would not recommend writing a traditional business plan initially. What you build in this business model canvas can be easily folded into a more traditional business plan if you need that to go forward to a bank to get funding or for an investor. So this is not a waste of time relative to that, because all of the pieces as you put together in this canvas are going to apply to a traditional business plan. But the important thing here is that you have to be taking steps to validate this business idea, prove that it can be a viable business. So next, there's some things to do on your own. We would strongly recommend, if you go to that website, indianapolis.score.org, I'm going to show you the homepage in just a second. You can go to that 45-minute webinar on an easier way to prepare your business plan, the business model canvas. Very, very well done by a couple of SCORE mentors, and they show you the form itself. You can download the forms and the instructions, etc. Excellent way to spend 45 minutes. Also, the Startup Roadmap, your guide to successfully starting a business. It's about 12 chapters, and it's an excellent way to kind of move through the things that we've talked about today in the last hour or so. You drill down so much deeper, and it's very, very worthwhile. If you're serious about starting a business, strongly recommend that. So those are some things to do on your own. So what are the next steps? Again, indianapolis.score.org, wealth of information. So we're suggesting that you complete the business model canvas and go through the courses in the roadmap. There's also a tremendous amount of other resources in the website library. And we also are going to encourage you to sign up for mentoring. And I think it's our next page. There we go. The box this is the home page at indianapolis.score.org. And you see the one box highlighted there. It says browse the library. That will take you to a lot of different white papers and instructions and so forth. You can find webinars there. And in the center of the box, looking at the beautiful downtown skyline and White River. Probably doesn't look quite that way today, but it's a pretty sight. Schedule a mentor meeting today. And this is what we encourage you to do. If you're serious about starting a business, set up a session with one of our mentors. We do Zoom sessions. And if you register online, that's the easiest process to go through, because it provides us with information like email addresses and phone calls and so forth. You just click on that box and it takes you right to a very easy sign up. So encourage you to do that, and encourage you to utilize the resources on our website. They're very, very significant and can be a big help to you. So that's your homework, and we hope to see you in a mentoring session. We're here to help.
Okay, Don, thanks. That was great. Covered a lot of material. I've been manning the Q&As. I've actually been able to answer them as we've been going along, and they were not the kind of questions that the whole group would probably have. They were more specific. Got a couple responses that said just signed up for mentoring. So it's working here, but we're doing real well on time. Yeah, I'm watching the questions. We're all up to date on them. I appreciate everybody coming. Most people came on time and then stuck it out to the end. That tells me that we kept everybody engaged. You see a comment coming through here in the chat. This webinar has answered many of my questions. We'll take a look at the resources on site. Yeah, this webinar is kind of the introductory webinar to SCORE. Most of the other ones are deeper dives into specific topics that we covered here. But every now and then we do like to have this webinar for those people who are more in the thinking stage and the planning stage. And a lot of the problem that people have is, where do I start? What do I do first? And I hope we gave you some thoughts on that here today, this morning. So I think,
Bill, did you address the subject of the availability of the slides?
let's talk about that. No, not as well as I should have. And here we go. Everybody who's registered for this webinar will be receiving a follow-up email that gives you a link to these same slides, PowerPoint slides, as well as a link to our YouTube channel where this webinar will be posted for you to watch again or to send to a friend or associate. And that takes us a couple, 2 or 3 days to get done because we have to move it from the Zoom platform to the YouTube platform. We edit off the chit chat at the beginning and go from there. But those will be coming back to you. And when you get that, by the way, there's also a click the box to give us some feedback. So there's a questionnaire attached. Appreciate it if you fill out that. But I'm watching the chats. I think everybody can see the same chat that I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
The last question came in: are these recorded webinars accessible to review? And I think we just talked about this. What is the YouTube channel? Okay, if you go to YouTube and then you use their search engine, so it's a subset of Google. It's owned by Google, but you go to the search engine in YouTube and you put in Indianapolis SCORE, those 2 words, you will link to our channel, which means you will link to it's up to about 10 now, 10 webinars that we have done here in Indianapolis since March. So it's a resource that's available. Webinars are recorded and posted there. So have a look at that if you haven't found it. You could catch up, get a snowy day sometime when you're not able to do anything else. Go enjoy an hour and a half webinar from SCORE. Let's see. I think we're good. I want to thank everybody. Thank our speakers. Don is the one that's got the big smile on his face because he's actually broadcasting from Florida. And that's not a bad place to be at the end of January, beginning of February, but we'll get by. We'll welcome Don back in the spring, along with all the Robins. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us. I think we're all caught up on the questions, and you're on our mailing list for future webinars, and just keep signing up, and glad to have you. And thanks to Don and Bill. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar now. Goodbye to all.